We're just about to start, so if you could kindly take your seats, and if you've got space next to you that you've got a bag on, make sure there isn't one on the bag, on the seat. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session, which is Conversation with WhatsApp. I'm Fergus Bell. I am a consultant and journalist. I'm also a founder of something called Pop-Up Newsroom. And joining me is Carl Wu from WhatsApp, who is head of communications based in San Francisco, based in, just
Menlo Park.
Menlo Park, yeah.
Just south of San Francisco.
And has come over to talk about WhatsApp. And I know that there's a lot of questions that people may have about how WhatsApp works, how it can be used for your news organizations and best practice. One of the things that kind of happened while since pitching this session and running it and now is that actually there's been a project that has been launched with WhatsApp that I've been involved with. We kind of suspected this might have happened, which is why the description of this session was quite vague. So if you will indulge me for a few minutes while we just kind of introduce that, that will slide neatly into some of the questions and conversation. So, some of you may be aware that there are elections going on right now in the world's largest democracy in India, and there is a problem with misinformation over any elections that are going on at the moment, particularly in India. There is a noticeable problem that has been well publicized. So some of us tried to think about options for tackling this. So I wanted to just take you back to November of 2018. I'm a founder of something called Pop-Up Newsroom, which is designed to bring people together to co-design solutions, but also identify challenges. So in Delhi in November, we had a workshop where we invited a whole load of news organizations, civil society organizations into a room, and we just said, hey, what's the problem in India with information and how that is shared? And let's map out all of the challenges and identify some possible solutions, but mainly let's set the scene, because we've got a whole load of people in this room and we can all put our experiences in. So one of the things that we really came away with was the issue that is very specific in India around communal rumors. So India is obviously a big country. You have a lot of different people, a lot of different groups, all communicating at a really local level about news and information, and they are sharing it. And when you're tackling communal rumors in any country, at the moment you tend to have to wait until it gets to that national level where it starts to go viral. That's also the easy way to make it to deliver something, because you can say we are tackling the most viral information. But what you're not doing is actually nipping it in the bud, which is very unsexy, because you can't say, well, we stopped all of these things, because there's never the problem that you can really say, hey, we've stopped the big problem. We're actually trying to stop it by nipping it in the bud. So we determined that if we could find a way to listen in to those signals that were being generated at community level, that would allow us to have a lot of advanced warning about what might go nationally viral. Because something has to start somewhere, and if we start looking at that somewhere, we might have a chance. So that has led a lot further down the line to an initiative that has been designed to expressly tackle or identify and create research around information that is shared at a communal level. So what we are doing in India, and with the help of WhatsApp, is we've launched something that works with local organizations, local stakeholders in communities, in order to get things shared on WhatsApp sent into us, sent into a tip line, so that we can start to get that insight into what is shared. And people are doing that of their own volition. We've given them the number, and they are able to send that on to us. Creating something like this is a little bit complex, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask Carl to explain the differences between WhatsApp Business APIs, because I know that this is something that a lot of people have questions about. But what we've done in India is we've combined the use of the WhatsApp Business API with a piece of technology developed by an organization called Medan, called Check, and we've designed workflows to be able to take research, process it, and turn it into something that we can use later on. So all of this looks like Checkpoint. It's got a real number. It was launched on the 2nd of April. This is the first time that we're talking about it. I've got a quote from our partner on the ground who are running it in Delhi, and they're called Proto, and they describe this initiative as a way of tapping into a network of community-level organizations to access, study, and verify misinformation and disinformation in closed social networks or messaging, private messaging apps in multiple languages and at an unprecedented scale. So unprecedented scale is probably the right word to use. I think there's more than 1 billion people in India. I don't know the official kind of number for potential WhatsApp users, but
we have over 200 million users in India.
So
it's our largest country.
So the scale is fairly unprecedented. But we're trying to do a few things with this data that comes into this service. So it might allow us to determine methods to kind of natively tackle mis and disinformation on WhatsApp, because people are sending us things through WhatsApp. It gives us those reference points. By creating these community groups that we are kind of working to send us stuff, we're also leaving an infrastructure behind, so that at the end of the election cycle, when this finishes, there is something still in place and these people are still talking about these issues at community level. We're also able to create data sets, and in a country of more than 1 billion people with 200 million? 200 million? No.
200 million.
200
yeah,
million.
200 million.
I thought I was wrong there.
Yeah.
200 million users on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
That's potentially a lot of data in terms of the types of things that are shared with us. So if you were to go onto WhatsApp right now and add that number, you would come up with this. This would be appearing on your screen. This is the official account for this initiative. And how it works is if you forward a link or a message or a photo or something that you've got on your phone or you're seeing on WhatsApp, you can forward it to this number. It will go into the database. It may be checked. If we are able to get to check it, and there are a lot of people sending messages, then that check goes into the database, and you will get a response saying, yes, we have been able to verify this, and this is the status of that. So with this thing that's on the screen, this was determined to be true, and you get a nice little report card showing all of the steps that have been done. And this is quite unique because we haven't it's not written up. This is not a fact-checking initiative. This is a kind of data analysis. So we are saying this has gone through a reverse image search. This has been, there are no signs of manipulation. And what we're able to show is a card of all of the checks that have been produced. I do a lot of verification work, and a lot of people talk about media literacy and how we can talk about verification, get that into the kind of natural language of people who are consuming content on a daily basis. And by showing all of the steps as to how this has been done, we hope that this will help people understand the processes that they can go through as they receive something. Everyone likes to see a little bit behind the curtain. This is just a snapshot of what the people receiving the content looks like. We just get a whole load of things. I know you're all taking photos as quickly as you can. This is what it looks like when we are looking at something that we've already done. So we can, this specific thing, someone had sent in a story that was had a photo, some text. Basically, we couldn't determine that this was at all genuine. The photo was old. The story wasn't necessarily current. We did all of these checks, and we were able to determine that it was misleading. This is that full stack of all of the checks that someone goes through. And just to let you know, just in terms of transparency, if that check has been done, it gets displayed in that report to the user. Yeah. So that's that. That just explains where we are with this initiative, and it's a pretty exciting thing, and it's a pretty I would say, groundbreaking way of trying to get this. We were really conscious of the fact that WhatsApp is a private space. We can't listen in on conversations. We wouldn't want to listen in,
right.
But people want to share things with us, and this was our way around it. And I'd just like to kind of kick off by asking you about India and kind of your thoughts about something like this and the research that might come out
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for setting up this conversation and also all the work that you're doing in India with Proto and Maidan. And maybe I can circle back to that in a few minutes. But first, if I could just say thank you so much for having WhatsApp here. This is our first time at this conference. We know there are a lot of great conversations that take place here, and I'm really honored to be participating in a dialogue about the future of journalism, the challenges that are apparent in some of our most important countries around misinformation, and what we at WhatsApp can do to help address this. So if I could just say first thing about private messaging, at WhatsApp, we're deeply committed to end-to-end encryption and private messaging, and we believe that there should be a place online for people to have private conversations, just as the way people have always had the chance to have a private conversation, whether that's not in the middle of the town square here in Perugia, but maybe in the privacy of their own home in the living room, where they might talk with their friends and family about things that are really personal and intimate to them, and that's really how WhatsApp is mainly used, even around the world. 90% of the conversations on WhatsApp are one-to-one text messages between two people. We have a private chat. This is more of a public conversation, obviously, today, but 90% of the messages are one-to-one, and then we have groups, as you probably know if you're a WhatsApp user, but the vast majority of groups, high average of these groups is under 10 people. So for us, we are trying to have an app that is maybe a little bit different than other apps that are out there, that is really about maintaining a private place and a private space. Now, when it comes to the challenge of misinformation, of course we know there's misinformation in every society, and that's going to be apparent on platforms, whether they're public platforms or private platforms. And we are trying to do a number of things to better understand the challenge of misinformation on WhatsApp and what we can do to tackle it and stop it. One of the things we're not going to do, though, is we're not going to be able to look at every single message that's being sent, because end-to-end encrypted is private. And that means that for us to kind of have a better sense of what's happening during this election in India, we needed to find a way of encouraging people to send some of the content that they're concerned about to this tip line, to researchers, so there can be a kind of a public study of what people are concerned about in India. So that's one step of many things that we're doing at WhatsApp that contribute, hopefully, to the safety of the elections coming up.
I think it would be really interesting you deal with WhatsApp users and organizations working with WhatsApp all around the world. One thing that has really struck me about India so far is the type of content that I know gets shared in India is very different to the type of content that I share with my family. There's a lot of political content, a lot of memes that are shared around. Is there a cultural difference between the way that people use WhatsApp and share information and news in different countries, and kind of how do you see that landscape?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just to level set, we have about 1.5 billion users of WhatsApp around the world. So these are conversations that are taking place, again, either one-to-one or mainly in small groups, day in, day out. We have about 65 billion messages that are sent every day on WhatsApp, just to give you kind of sense of the traffic that's happening on our network. Again, all of that is end-to-end encrypted. One of the things that we saw and have learned as we kind of take a look at different countries, and we travel a lot. We also obviously do focus groups and research, talking to our users, and we have some sense of how the platform is used, even if we can't see the content of the messages itself, is that people really forwarded quite a bit in India. And it was one of the countries where we saw more forwards, not just because India is one of the largest countries where WhatsApp is used, but also just the behavior, the way people were using WhatsApp. They were sending a lot of forwards. And so last year we made a change to the product to actually limit the amount of forwards that people could send at one time. So it used to be you could forward to, many people in your address book. We actually set a cap to say you can only forward something to 5 chats at once. And what that's done is it's reduced the amount of forwarded content on our system by about 25%. And so it makes WhatsApp kind of return to that personal feeling of the conversations that you're having with your most immediate friends and contacts. I think what we also hear in India, look, there's a lot of people sharing photos, videos. It's very popular to get good morning messages in India with GIFs and other, kind of charming photos and things like that. It's just a culture where there's quite a lot of sharing going on, and that can be good, but we also can see how that can be challenging. So part of our effort has been to make that change to the product.
An obvious challenge in India is actually the language issue. So we talk about the number of people in that one country, but the number of languages that are spoken is incredible. And dialects. And a way of sharing information without language is to share a photo or a video, because you don't need to have it. Also, there's, from my experience so far, like people will kind of use Roman characters to speak another language. It's really complex how information is communicated, and that's definitely been my takeaway. I think WhatsApp supports quite a few languages.
We do. We support, I think, about 10 languages in the app. But again, as you mentioned, in India alone, about 60 languages total. But as you mentioned, people use the app in their own way, and our team has focused. We're about 10 years old now at WhatsApp. Our team has focused from the beginning on making WhatsApp as simple and as basic, to use, just to give people a sense of control over the experience that they're having. It helps that people who are coming online or to the internet for the first time, they often turn to WhatsApp to communicate, but it also helps for people who've been using the internet for a long time, just really have a simple interface, and that helps people, communicate. The graphics are very clear. It's just a very easy way and a simple way to communicate. And as we've gone out and done public education campaigns, we've been very careful and cautious to make sure that we are reaching a wide variety of languages. So we have an education campaign that we can talk about now or later that's happening in India that we've done in 10 languages to make sure that people are widely receiving information that what we've called a campaign is called Share Joy and Not Rumors. And so there's a whole TV component to this, there's a radio component to this, really trying to educate people about the challenge of misinformation and the kind of the steps they can take to keep themselves safe on WhatsApp.
Is that something that you've just done in India, or have you done similar campaigns or similar kind of educational output in other places? Yeah,
India has been by far the largest, and it's the first place we've run a TV advertisement, and that's in large part due to the popularity of TV as a major broadcast medium in India. But we've also done these campaigns in Brazil, in Nigeria. Indonesia has an election coming up on the 17th, and in Mexico as well.
Mexico is an interesting one. Yeah. And that would actually kind of lead me into the question. Let's talk about kind of news organization use of WhatsApp. And there's a lot of people probably in this room who I was very confused to begin with about the difference between using WhatsApp as a private individual, using WhatsApp as a brand, how news organizations can create accounts. There's business accounts, there's an API. Right. Could you just give the kind of lowdown on the different products that there are?
Absolutely. So again, you all know WhatsApp as a private messaging app that you use to talk to friends and family. Of course, what we've also seen around the world is that people want to talk to a business on WhatsApp, and they want to get an answer from a business. And so early last year, we started rolling out 2 products that are designed to help organizations of varying sizes to communicate with people on WhatsApp. And I'll come back to news organizations in a second. But we have 2 products, as Fergus mentioned. One is called the WhatsApp Business app. This is available on the Android, the Google Play Store. And you can download WhatsApp. And it has the business app there. And it has a lot more features if you're a business for how you might respond to customers who are messaging you. So it has a more robust profile where you're able to put kind of frequently asked questions about your business and things that you do. And then it also gives you a lot of tools to automatically reply to users. So simple things like an away message, so let people know, that when you're out of the office and you're not answering questions. A greeting message, so when you get a message from your customer the first time you ask a question, you can have kind of an automatic response. And then a whole system to label and organize the messages that are coming in. This is very valuable for small micro businesses and small businesses that are doing a lot of their commerce on WhatsApp, believe it or not, in countries like India, Indonesia, all throughout Latin America. We have some great stories about this on our website. Second was we want to support larger businesses as well, having a presence on WhatsApp. And we've developed something called the WhatsApp Business API, which is what you're using for the Checkpoint project in India. And this is an enterprise solution, in effect, that allows a business to receive messages at scale, to provide customer service. So to give you an example, KLM Airlines, if you go to their website, you'll see they have a WhatsApp icon on their website. And you can tap that button and it'll open a chat in your WhatsApp and you can message them, you can ask them a question. And those questions are going to a customer service operations center that they're manning, that they're facilitating common questions about KLM, kind of an issue you might have with them. Maybe you want to tell them a great experience on the airline. But you're able to interact with the business. And we are also allowing for very specific personalized notifications to go to users. So for example, in that airline example I mentioned, some people want to get their boarding pass sent to them. They'll be able to get their boarding pass sent on WhatsApp. You go to the website, you check in, you hit the WhatsApp button, and it comes to you. So those are the two things that we're doing for both businesses, small and large. And I think where news organizations come in is, of course, we know that news organizations have a desire to distribute content. And I think for us at WhatsApp, we are, frankly, we take a view that WhatsApp is really for private messaging. And because it's private and because it's end-to-end encrypted, we are focused on making sure that people are able to communicate first and foremost with their friends and loved ones and kind of get these answers from a business. So we haven't yet developed a system for people to distribute information at scale. But one of the things that's been really interesting working with your team, Fergus, is that perhaps there is an interaction that a user wants to have with a news organization. And I think as we think long-term about so many users coming into the internet for the first time, many of them using WhatsApp, maybe there's a slightly different way that we should go about engaging with users that we're learning and watching from the projects that you've been doing that I think might give us a sense of some things we should think about for the future.
One of the really interesting things that we're seeing, and this research project has only been going for 2 days so far, but one of the really interesting things we've seen is actually once we've given people a number to send stuff to, it looks like they are going out and taking pictures of news articles in papers, because in India a lot of news stories just end up in print. They don't appear online. And there's never been a way to check things like that before. So they've been taking pictures of newspapers and sending it in. Also clearly going out and taking pictures of posters in the streets. So by opening up an opportunity to send this information, we've almost bridged the gap between digital and the analog world, the real world, in order to allow people to fact check things, or not fact check, but send things in for research and verification in this world. And I could imagine fact checkers taking something like this on and saying, actually, don't just send us something that's in a digital space. We can hold people accountable, in the real world as well. And and I think that there is scope for these things to be built, and we didn't know this.
Right.
We didn't know that there might be an interest in something like this 2 days ago, which is fascinating. You don't know until you turn it on. Yeah. So just again a little bit more on how news organizations specifically use some of the functions of WhatsApp. I know that there's news organizations using status to tell stories, and people are telling stories through WhatsApp.
They are. I mean, we have a feature in WhatsApp. It's called status, but it's very similar to like your Instagram stories, right? It's ephemeral. The content you post is only available for 24 hours. It goes away. The difference with WhatsApp is that you can only post something to people who you've added to your contact list on your phone, and to people who have added you to their contactless on their phones. There has to be this reciprocity and this desire to receive each other's information on WhatsApp. That's the foundation of the system. And so we have seen some news organizations, some fact-checking organizations in particular, put out their number, begin to build a small audience and relationship with readers, and then post information in their status, and also ask questions of their readers and users through that. And I do want to caveat that it's limited in scope, because really one of the things we learned in Mexico, we can get into this, is you're basically limited by the capacity of a phone, but I think it gives us an idea of where we might be able to go in the future. So
let's talk a little bit about Mexico, because WhatsApp helped out with the project in Mexico that we were doing with some of the infrastructure. So there are a number of sessions where we dive into various parts of this project called Verificado at this festival. So we'll just dive into the WhatsApp specific part right now, but it was essentially a 3-month-long fact-checking verification initiative that was a collaboration started with 3 organizations: Animo Politico, AJ Plus Español, and Pop-Up Newsroom, of which I am one of the co-founders, along with Midan, who are sitting here as well. So what we did was, we knew that WhatsApp, information and misinformation was going around WhatsApp at incredible speed, specifically with a focus on the election and on the campaign. And so we formed a collaboration to try and work out how we could do that, because no individual organization could achieve that at scale. So what started with 3 people and 3 organizations in a collaboration ended up by election day with 90 news, civil society organizations in Mexico. And what we did, and a lot of this credit goes to AJ Plus, who essentially created a new format, or one of the first formats, for how to deliver engaging news content over WhatsApp. And we kind of had to, the API didn't exist.
It didn't exist then. So the API first started rolling out in August, and so this was in May, I think, of last year. So before that came about.
Yeah, so what we did before the API is we had, I think it was 2 people whose job it was to receive messages from people and sit at the WhatsApp desk and respond and have a communication. And I think we had 60,000 incoming messages to those people and 30,000 manual responses over a 3-month period. So it was 2 people's job to just do the WhatsApp thing. And we learned a lot about the way that people interact with WhatsApp. And as Carl says, it's a different way. It's one-to-one. So these people who were tasked with this were having a conversation with these individuals. But what we were also able to do is create this new kinds of content. So we created incredible GIFs, or GIFs, or whatever you want to call them, graphics that were designed for WhatsApp, designed to be shared and forwarded. And they were. Yeah. And the statuses were used a lot as a way of compiling all of these to show what had been checked that day. Did you have any idea that status could be used in that way, or was going to be used in that way?
No. I mean, and that is the joy of working with partners around the world, which we're a small team, but we're trying to do that more and more, and to see how the product can be used to help kind of these challenges, also just to help people communicate and get the information they're looking for. So it's a journey for us as well.
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask if you've seen any other kind of things that surprise you about how WhatsApp has been adapted for information sharing or for news. I know in Indonesia they use it a lot, but I think the news industry sometimes, when there's a new platform that just allows for the distribution of information, we kind of jump on it because it's a new opportunity to reach an audience. I'd just be really interested to kind of see how we talked a little bit about the scope of what the research project in India could do, but how do you see this relationship potentially growing, or as WhatsApp is very simple to use, and obviously that's key to making it simple, but how do you think news organizations could work more closely with WhatsApp? Is WhatsApp open to that? Is WhatsApp open to exploring innovation in this space?
Yeah, I would say we're putting our toe in the water. Yeah. And we're starting to think more about this space, in large part because of the way we've worked together, but also others. I mean, one thing I didn't mention is there's a number of news organizations who have their WhatsApp business app accounts as a way of kind of crowdsourcing information when there's let's say, a natural disaster, or when there's a kind of eyewitness news, and that's been very helpful to them to kind of get a lead on what may be happening in an area, and then they'll follow up and have a chat with somebody, call to verify it, or whatever, things like that. But I think for us, we, just to set the stage, that we have an interest in figuring out a role for news organizations doing this kind of work. But I think we also just recognize up front that it's going to be a little bit different than what other platforms that are designed to build an audience, designed to broadcast information, maybe a more natural fit. Certainly have their own challenges as well, but for WhatsApp, I think we are going to try to stay true to our roots in the way that we are this private communications platform. But I think if we can be innovative, there's probably a few ways of working together, like the way we are, and maybe the way there can be others working with WhatsApp as well.
So I want to just start getting the audience thinking about questions.
Sure.
I'm leaving plenty of time. If we could get a microphone into the room, I'm just going to, as the moderator here, I'm just going to say, please could you frame what you're saying as a question, and not just stand up and give opinions and monologues. You can give an opinion, but just make sure there's a question at the end of it.
Yeah. You can text me afterwards if you have a one-on-one message.
Who's got the microphone here? So, if we could start with this lady at the front, actually.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Just here, yeah.
Hi, I'm an investigative reporter from India and a journalist fellow at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, Oxford University. Yeah. And in the last 6 months, I have looked at around 220 WhatsApp groups, political WhatsApp groups, 140 run by the pro-BJP, 140 pro-BJP groups and 80 pro-Congress groups.
Right.
I have 3 questions. Is there a way to quantify the number of political groups from the group name or display information? Because that's the root cause of the problem in India. Second, how do you differentiate between communal rumors and illegal hate speech, mostly Islamophobic? And the third question is, any idea whether the 25% reduction of forwards is from personal accounts or political groups?
Yeah,
so there's some very specific questions there.
Sure. So WhatsApp, by design, doesn't collect a lot of information about the way people use our platform. And that is something that is important to us, and we think it's important to users to protect their privacy. We don't have information to share about how the specific content that people are discussing in groups, because we can't see the conversations that people are having. And I'm familiar with some of the research that perhaps one of your colleagues is working on, we can talk about afterwards, to try to get a sense of what's happening in these groups. But that, in many ways, that's novel research for us to learn a little bit about what you're seeing. I think on the whole, we know that, as I said, most groups are very small, and there's a small subset of users, including in India, that participate in larger groups. Our belief in talking to many users, most of those groups are probably not political in nature, where they might be relative to where you live, or it might be a school group for where your children go to school. We hear those stories all the time. But we do know that political parties are attempting to use WhatsApp in an organized way, and we have taken a strong stand against that, to explain to political parties going into the India election that the bulk or automated use of WhatsApp, messaging users without their consent or interest, will result in us banning those accounts. We can ban those accounts. Again, things are a little bit different on WhatsApp. Not necessarily because of the content they're sharing, but in the way that they act and operate on the platform. So I'll give you an example. There are organizations that have commercial and political interest that attempt to get a phone list with many numbers, and will try to send messages at scale through WhatsApp. And we have machine learning algorithms that are looking for abnormal use and abnormal behavior. I'll give you an example. One of them is to look at the address book. So we can see the phone numbers that you have in your contact list and vice versa. That's part of how we deliver the message, of course. And what we'll scan for at scale is to see, are people sending a message to a lot of people who are outside their contact list? And that is a signal to us that there may be abuse going on. And we will take that information and those signals and ultimately to ban users. We're banning about 2 million accounts per month, which is a significant amount of accounts. And we do believe that we have banned a number of political accounts already in WhatsApp and in the India election. And we've done trainings with political parties in India, not unlike the conversation we're having today, that tries to set up how WhatsApp is different and tries to explain to them that if you want to do political organizing, there are a number of other platforms that may be of use to you. But if you're going to operate on WhatsApp, here are the rules of the road. And a key thing for that is people need to message you first and desire to participate in your group, or show a desire to participate in your group, or to have a one-on-one chat with you as a political party, and not to kind of send these messages at scale.
Can I just speak to the point about the communal rumors? I think one of the reasons why we set up a tip line to start to try and tap into that is because we don't know what a communal rumor looks like. We just know anecdotally from speaking to a whole load of organizations in India that communal rumors are where we think things potentially start. So by creating a place where people can share this, we can see it. And one of the things that we will probably be able to do is say, okay, we got a piece of content on this day at this time. We don't know who it's coming from. We can't see that. But if that then turns into something that becomes a national, a viral piece of content at a national level 20 days later, was that the start of it? Was that, and is that what we should start to consider as a communal rumor? And how do we address that? How could journalists address that? How could researchers address that? How could WhatsApp address that? So from the communal rumors part of it, we don't know. I'm also looking at communal rumors in terms of coverage of major, say, natural disasters. So you've all seen the stories that have been done about the hurricanes and the kind of rumors and fake photos that go around. They start with someone making that, and then they kind of grow. And we can, in other places, we are looking at how those kinds of communal rumors can grow. So hopefully that answers the question about that. Just while we find another microphone, I wanted to just ask Carl about the end-to-end encryption and just, like, what can you see? I know you've kind of answered this, but what can you see and what can't you see, and what does end-to-end encryption mean for a user?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to explain is we cannot see the content of messages that are privately shared between people, whether that's a one-to-one message or a group. We cannot listen to the contents of calls that are taking place on our system. We cannot see status posts that are sent. All of this is end-to-end encrypted, and it's protected for people's privacy. So as a journalist, if you're talking to a source, you can have confidence that there's no one monitoring that chat. And that message exists on your phone and the other person's phone, and it doesn't exist anywhere else. So we believe, particularly in this age of growing proliferation of online content, and people are moving all of their information online. For us, we want people's messages to be in their pocket and in their phone, and we think that's the safest place for people's messages. Now, we can see some information about the users of our accounts, but even still, we don't ask for a lot of information. So you can choose to add a profile photo to to WhatsApp. You don't have to. You can choose to have a name. It could be your name. It could be a name that you have a pseudonym, or just any name, frankly, or just a blank, a period and an exclamation mark or something. I mean, it doesn't have to be a name. As the idea is that there should be a place for people to privately communicate with one another, and to maintain that anonymity as desired. And so there's a limit to what we really can see and we can guess. And even if you thought about a group name, for us, it's you could have a group name, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happening inside that group, unless you're able to join it. And for us, that's not something we're able to do.
Questions? Gentleman with the microphone.
So thank you for this nice, interesting chat. Ali from Euronews. Apart from crowdsourcing, lots of media organizations are already using WhatsApp as a dissemination channel, but working with some third-party organizations. So what's your relation with these third-party organizations? And the second question, is WhatsApp planning to provide media organizations with similar services? Thank you.
It's a great question. So we are not providing direct support to any organization to disseminate content at scale on WhatsApp, period. We are not providing that support. And in fact, we are working to step up our ability to limit that use case because of our concern about problematic content being distributed at scale, not being concerned about necessarily a news organization, but being concerned about the other ways that it could be abused. And so, again, as I kind of set up at the beginning of the conversation, that for those who just joined, for us at WhatsApp, we're trying to think through how can we be helpful to the ability to study information that's happening in a country, so you can do whether that's research or fact-checking or full-scale journalism. What is the right way to do that, and what is a good way, an appropriate way, given the nature of private messaging, for people to receive information and communicate with the journalists. So I think this is a journey that we're on, that we're still at really the early stages at. But for now, we are not providing kind of broad support to do that, and I think there are pretty specific limitations to how those types of things that you mentioned are being used, and it's still pretty small scale. Probably not the scale that news organizations would like, but for us, it's not something that we're prepared to support right now.
Thank you. Who's got a microphone?
Thank you. WhatsApp has been having these initiatives on the elections of India and Mexico, for example, but what about the case of Brazil, where we had allegedly cases of groups and private companies investing in the shooting of messages,
right,
massive messages, and other things? So what happened prior to the election there in WhatsApp? And if
that's
WhatsApp, so basically.
Yeah, I mean, so this actually, you really are making the point in a different way than the previous question, which is that for us, we're concerned about that kind of activity where an organization, may be trying to send a message at scale. And for us, we have systems that are designed to sort of spot that abnormal behavior. And during the Brazilian elections, we banned hundreds of thousands of accounts that were trying to do just that. And I know that there's ongoing investigations in Brazil to try to understand, what organizations may have been a part of those alleged efforts, and we'll be, cooperative in trying to help with the information that we have. But on the whole, this is one of the reasons why we're not trying to enable that kind of capability at this time on WhatsApp.
Yeah, but besides banning these accounts, like that, for example, there were millions that would also ban. Like, what are the other measures that WhatsApp could have done in the case of Brazil? Because we had the restrictions to the number of messages to 5, but it came sort of late if we analyze the result of the elections.
Right.
And it's undeniable that WhatsApp in Brazil has like a central role, not
Indeed.
only in elections, but in Brazil as a whole. And in Brazil's politics, since the family for Bolsonaro uses it like every day, and for like communications with leaks and everything. So does WhatsApp thinks of its position in this case of like as a spreader, as other measures that it could take like to retain these cases in the future?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question. So, and just to give people the backstory, when we started to put in these forward limits, we had a lower limit for India. And that was the 5 chats at once, and then we moved the entire world onto the same limit. For us at the time, the reason why the decision was made is because there was an overwhelming amount of sharing that was happening in India that wasn't occurring in other countries in that same way. And at the same time, we had confidence in our systems that were able to activate to address these kind of shots as you used in Brazil. It's kind of mass messaging. And so the forward limits are really designed to try to deal with kind of more, I don't know exactly how to say it, it's kind of the more organic distribution of content, perhaps, the way that some people would receive messages and then kind of forward them a lot, and try to kind of rein things in and make it more private. So that's only one element to our to our ability to try to ban and deal with accounts that are attempting to abuse at scale. So we made that change, and I realized the feedback that, this is something that we perhaps should have considered going globally initially, and that's a lesson learned. But we're also now making another change that we announced yesterday, which will be rolling out globally, that will give you the permission a new setting on your groups that will say that you have to give permission to be added to a group. Because we've also started to see the kind of abuse where people are just getting added to groups, maybe not even sending a message right away, but just people saying, joining you to a group, and now suddenly you're getting messaged by, a dozen people or so that you don't know. And we've now put in the beginning to roll this out this week, and it'll take a few weeks to reach everybody, but this new permission. So that's just yet another example of how we're trying to build more privacy controls into the app as we go forward.
Another question. Has anyone got a microphone? Could we go to the lady at the front here, and then we'll go to the lady at the back. So the lady at the front here, and then the lady at the back.
Thank you. WhatsApp has enabled people to communicate freely for free, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so successful, that people can communicate and exchange as much as they want for free. Yes. But the other side is the spread of fake news and hate speech and rumors that WhatsApp enable. And you have mentioned that how the content is encrypted, and it's impossible for anyone to see the content that is exchanged. So it makes it more difficult to check what is exchanged on the platform, and the nature of WhatsApp as to being a private, a platform for communication. I'm wondering, is there any how can we do to avoid people spreading fake news? And we've have heard many stories of people that have received information and get killed and beaten, following messages that have been exchanged through WhatsApp. And how do you see that being manageable to tackle it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you for the question. I mean, for us, we really do deeply believe in people's ability to communicate freely and privately. And changing our privacy model, once you make that change, once you lose your sense of privacy, it's very hard to get that back. And so for us, we are trying to do as much as we can contribute on a few different projects, if you will. One is to educate users about misinformation. Let them know that there is misinformation spreading in a country. We just made the decision to add a forward label to messages, so it gives people a sense that the content they've received, didn't come from their most immediate contact. It came from somewhere farther away, and to have doubt about that information and to not share things onward again. The second is to tackle abuse and to try to tackle the kind of organic sharing we talked about. So we limited the forwards. And limit the ability for anyone to send kind of mass messages at scale, really very large scale on WhatsApp, because you could imagine misinformation tied with mass distribution is very problematic. We want to protect against that. And then the third is to work with civil society, work with partners on what we think is a shared challenge. It's a long-term challenge, one that will not go away, in one election, but will be around for some time. And so the things that we've been able to work on together, I think, give us a sense of what is unique about misinformation on WhatsApp, what is similar to misinformation in other places, what can we do to further do education, what steps should we take in the product going forward. So this is a learning process that we go, one step at a time. But I think that there's a number of things that we can do, and we will try to continue to do, to maintain the private nature of WhatsApp and to contribute to the safety of our users and some of the very reasonable concerns that you just mentioned.
There's, I think, a microphone at the back. There's someone holding one there. Can you? Yeah, thank you.
I'd love to ask a question. I'm an older person.
Hi.
Than most of the people here. And I'm not a WhatsApp generation, although I use it. Actually, our son, I'm American, I've lived in Assisi for about 50 years. One of our 3 children worked for WhatsApp in Palo Alto, and I visited the Facebook campus. Or he worked for WhatsApp, what's Mountain View, maybe?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anyway, this question may have been answered, and pardon my ignorance if I don't get it. I received on WhatsApp for the first time solicitation from a person I do not know.
Yeah.
I'm a guide here in Umbria. This person has an agriturismo, country hotel, and they asked me to come and see it, recommend it to my tour guests.
Yeah.
And I wrote immediately back to him. I never got a response. I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And kindly refrain from future contacts.
Sure.
And I saw he read the message. I got no reply. How did I get to him, or how did he get to me?
Sure.
What group am I in?
Well, it's a great question.
Did he email all the Umbrian tour guides? Did he get our
well, maybe
phone numbers?
Maybe I could get a tour after this.
Sure,
get
come
some
over
fresh
to
air with you.
Assisi,
That would be great. But no, actually, it's a really good question. And you received a one-on-one message. You received a personal message.
And his photo was in it, and so forth.
Sure. And so your WhatsApp account is your phone number, right?
Right.
So anyone who finds your phone number can send you a message on WhatsApp. And phone numbers are if you're a business and you want people to message you, you can put your phone number up and you can ask people to message you, and that might be a way of you finding new leads for your tour operation. But of course, in your case, you don't want to be messaged by this person. And I don't know how he found your phone number.
Maybe because I have a website and I'm a guide, so we might have
so maybe you got it that way.
Yeah, okay.
But one of the things that we do on WhatsApp to try to help protect against this from happening too often is as soon as you get a message from someone not in your contacts, we immediately display a warning that says, do you want to report, block, report, or add this user to your contacts? So that is a message that we're trying to put right in front of users to give them options right away. If you don't know who's messaging you, you can tap that block button, one tap, they will never be able to contact you again. If it's abusive in nature, you can report that user. We're looking at those signals at scale. So if a user is gaining a lot of reports, we know to ban them from WhatsApp, and we do that. I was mentioning earlier that we're banning about 2 million accounts per month for that type of abuse. And you can, even after you've asked that person a question, you've had a chat and you realize this person doesn't really want to have a conversation, they were just trying to get something to you that's kind of like spam, you can still tap on their name at the top of their phone number and scroll down and hit the report button and or block button, and they won't be able to contact you again. But it does happen. It happened to me today. I got a message from someone I didn't know, wasn't a journalist here, but I just hit the block button, and my experience will remain private, and I'd encourage you to do that if that happens to you again. I'm sorry that did happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go for another one here, and then the lady in the second row, please. The gentleman in the white shirt, and then the lady in the second row.
Hi, thank you very much.
Sure. Hi.
Can you please comment on what kind of data or anything that you track in individual messages, and if you have any kind of sharing of information between the companies that are part of the same brand? I mean, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or whatever.
Sure, it's a great question, and we are pretty light in terms of the information we collect on our users, and you can actually see for yourself the information that is in your account profile. If you go to your settings and account, there will be an option that says download your data, and you can download your data, and you can see the limited profile information that we have about you and about our users, and we are not tracking all messages as they go through our system, again, because our commitment to privacy, that's not part of what we do. We do have a limited sharing with our parent company, Facebook. Encourage you to get a cappuccino at their stand after this. But there are very specific reasons for how that data sharing works. And we enumerate that on our website, and particularly here in Europe, it's a bit restricted. But one of the key things, and I think it's important to point this out, is that we rely on the infrastructure from Facebook. So even though all your messages are encrypted as they move through our system, they are still moving through the same kind of physical infrastructure that that our parent company has developed over the years, and that there are controls over the kinds of information that are part of your profile information, how that can be shared, and really they're for very small reasons. One is analyzing the kinds of information kind of users that we have, counting how many users, and we have to report that out as part of being part of a public company, how many users we have. So we use their systems to do that unique counting. That's one example. And then also for safety purposes. And there are times when that we see that there's a problematic behavior on Facebook, and we can see sometimes there's problematic experiences like we've talked about a little bit here on WhatsApp, and there can be a discussion to see, well, maybe we should disable these accounts across all of the services that we provide. So that there are some very specific cases about how in Europe that data sharing has worked, and we have a very detailed FAQ on our website that I can point you to if you want to see that line by line.
So just to clarify one thing,
sure.
So you can take an action on one platform according to your behavior in another platform.
In some cases that happens. We're talking about the worst kind of abuse, child exploitative issues, those types of things. There will be times when the companies will work to share information with one another to keep the platform safe. I think as people would expect.
So we've got the lady in the second row here. If you could pass your microphone, sorry to. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is very simple, and I apologize if it's too simple.
No.
If I understood it correctly.
Thank you.
WhatsApp Business is a different app from WhatsApp.
Yes.
While you were talking, I checked, and it's available only for Android. Is that true, and why?
So the answer to that question will change at the end of today. So check. It's currently available for Android. We've started making it available on iOS soon. So stay tuned today. Check back a little bit later today. We've actually been working on this for the last several months, and very excited to expand WhatsApp Business to the iPhone as well.
We've got 4 minutes. I'm going to take 2 more questions. One from the lady here, and then one from the gentleman in the jumper over there.
This is a little follow-up on the previous question about the other platforms, because Zuckerberg a few weeks ago announced a new strategy towards privacy, more focus on privacy, and also an integration in the back end of all the messaging apps. So what is going to change for WhatsApp in this case? And you can think about it.
This is a wonderful, wonderful question, and I think Mark, tried to lay out the values and the plans going forward, and some of the challenges and questions that the companies will have to answer and resolve. So I don't have all the answers today, but one of the things I think is really significant is a broader move by the parent company towards end-to-end encryption for all of their messaging apps. And I think for us that is a really significant step forward for privacy. There are some countries where WhatsApp's very popular, and there's some countries where WhatsApp's not really popular at all, believe it or not. And in some of those countries, Facebook Messenger is very popular. And moving people towards encryption there, I think, is very significant. And I think when you imagine a world that when all of these apps are encrypted, there are some times you might have a friend in that country, or you may live in a country where there are a lot of Messenger users and a lot of WhatsApp users, but you have that kind of one friend who's on the other thing. I think we're trying to say, well, wouldn't it be nice if you had the option to send a message across from one app to the other? That might be convenient for you. And so those are the types of things that we're exploring at this time. It would be, the word that was used was to interoperate, so that there would be an ability to send an encrypted message from one app to your friend on the other app, if that's something you chose to do.
We've got 2 minutes and 15 seconds left until we're kicked out, and if this gentleman doesn't answer this question, I won't be forgiven. So.
Hi, very interesting talk. My question is regarding the API.
Yes.
So I think you're right that there could be massive abuse if everything is open up.
Yeah.
But I think regarding some use cases, for example, news bots, I think it could be useful to have that do you think there will be a point where WhatsApp will open that for news organizations?
I think it's a great question, and one that we're asking this ourselves as well, and we're trying to learn from people and get feedback on this approach too. I think, again, one of those values would be that it'd be user-led, so you would request information and then get a response. It's not too far different from what we've been talking about at the project in India, where you can make a request and they won't be able to respond to every single user, but when they have that information that makes a match, that response comes through. I mean, there was a whole activity to find out the answer to that question, but then the process of sending the message, thanks to the work of Maidan, and thanks to the integration that they've been able to do through the WhatsApp Business API, that response can be automated. So I think that's one of the things that we're thinking about for the future. But if I just say one thing before we get kicked out, that we recognize for WhatsApp we focus so much on the private and personal communication over the 10 years of our company that we're really entering this business space for the first time, really in the middle of last year. So we're so early in trying to solve these challenges. We believe that there's probably a way to do this on WhatsApp that is going to be a little bit different than other platforms. And for us, we're at the stage where we're excited to participate in conferences like this and meet other people to get feedback and discuss how we might be able to work with one another in the future. And in the meantime, I'll just say thank you so much for coming to this and hearing our point of view and giving us some of the great feedback that you've provided today. And thank you, Fergus, for doing this.
Thanks, Carl, for coming over. Thanks, everyone.